Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your attendance. I honestly trust that you will give as much publicity as possible to this issue because it deserves to be spread far and wide as possible, hopefully, and hopefully somebody in the government will take notice and do something about this. The mere fact that there are, as I speak, still 12 Caprivians in prison after almost 26 years is nothing else but a testimony of the heartlessness of the SWAPO government, and it makes a mockery of the so-called policy of national reconciliation. Geoffrey Molima, as well as Thaddeus Ndara, Bennett Ntuso, John Temwe, Alex Mushakwa are in prison in Windhoek. John Sabona is in prison in Duvundu. Progress Munuma, Shine Samuandela, Emmanuel Makandamu and Agri Makandamu are in prison in Chumep, with Hosted Ntombu and Frederick Ntambilwa in Marinta. Some of them were imprisoned in Botswana since 2000 and later extradited to Namibia 2 years ago, where they were sentenced to between 5 and 16 years in prison. Now we must remember that they were in prison already since 2000 in Botswana. The scary part is that this attitude is not something new, and I'm talking about the attitude of the SWAPO government. Because we all know what happened with the Lubango dungeons and the manner in which loyal SWAPO combatants were summarily incarcerated, tortured, and some even killed, just because of their suspicion that they were spying for the enemy. Despite desperate pleas by relatives, SWAPO still refused to give full account of what happened to those who are still missing. Now, coming back to the Caprivians, more than 100 Caprivians who have been incarcerated in 1999 were found not guilty after having spent almost 16 years in jail, during which time a number of them died. 30 Caprivians were convicted, some of them found guilty only by association, of which Mr. Geoffrey Molima is one. Shocking was the manner in which Mr. Molima was tortured beyond recognition, and I saw those photos, and almost killed when he was taken into custody in 1999, which obviously completely against the Constitution. Article 8, which deals with the respect and human dignity of in our Constitution under paragraph B, says clearly, no person shall be subject to torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Beside that, unquote, if the fact that it took 16 years to conclude the court case against these men is a clear testimony of the incompetence and maybe even deliberate action by the Namibian police to do their investigations timeously in respect of the human dignity of those accused of offences. In Mr. Molima's case, he appealed many times to be released based on his medical condition, because he suffers from kidney failure for which he is currently still receiving dialysis 3 times a week. And he also has diabetes, which affects his eyesight. In November 2022, the High Court of Namibia ordered a proper examination to be carried out on Mr. Molima, and based on the report of the so-called parole board, his release from prison was denied. Now, I visited Mr. Molima on average once a month. It is heartbreaking to see him and others deteriorating in prison. In December 2023, Mr. Molima wrote a letter to the late President Geingob requesting an audience with him. I also wrote a letter to Dr. Geingob in which I encouraged him to meet with Mr. Molima, because I knew that Mr. Molima wanted to clear the air regarding the 99 secessionist attempt and to open the way for the SWAPO government and the Caprivian people to reconcile. Now, according to very reliable source, President Geingob was very sympathetic towards the Molima issue and requested a report from the parole board. But the shocking outcome was that the board recommended that Mr. Molima not be released. The question remained to be answered is why not? What was the basis for their decision? Surely Mr. Molima, as well as the rest of the 11 Caprivians, could not be seen as a security threat. So there must be something else that motivated them not to recommend his release. And I can only contribute this to the Lubango attitude of the members of the parole board. And I'm saying this out loud. I'm planning to meet with the Commissioner General of Correctional Services, Mr. Amunyela, in order to find out what their reasoning is for keeping these men in jail. And I think, from my understanding, is that the Office of the President will also contact him after our meeting that we had with the President. Surely they must take into consideration the fact that the remaining Caprivians have spent their entire productive life in prison and should have recommended that they release purely based on humanitarian grounds. 2.5 weeks ago, I was invited to a meeting with President Ndaitwa, where I, amongst others, brought up the Caprivian issue. I handed her a letter from myself as well as Mr. Molima and pleaded with her to pardon the remaining Caprivians who are in custody. The fact is that our President does not have to follow any recommendation from anybody when considering pardons. This was one of the reasons given to me why President Geinkop could not pardon Mr. Molima, because he had to act based on the recommendations of the parole board. That's not true. Article 32 of the Constitution, the Namibian Constitution, paragraph 3D, under the heading of functions, powers and duties of the President, clearly state, and I quote, "He can pardon or reprieve offenders either unconditionally or subject to such conditions as the President may deem fit," unquote. Now, following a meeting with our President and the following fruitful discussion we had, I publicly stated that I have full confidence in her to lead our country in a manner that will benefit all Namibians, and I stand by that. I therefore want to request her to act in accordance with the above-mentioned Article 32, paragraph 3D, and pardon the remaining Caprivians, let them go home and reconcile with their families. I want to conclude by saying that the manner in which the previous Swapo governments completely failed to deal with the Caprivi issue is shocking. The uprising in 1999 happened because the Caprivians were unhappy about something, and since then nothing has been done, nothing has changed, except that they are living in fear and are scared to say anything that might result in them taken into custody again. Unforgivable is the fact that not once did the previous Swapo governments, and I'm talking about former presidents and their senior ministers, ever visited the Caprivian region and enter into a dialogue with all the leaders and chiefs in that region in order to find out why they are unhappy and what need to be done to resolve those issues. In conclusion, I would like our current president to do just that, to reconcile and to demonstrate to the country what national reconciliation really means, and to release and pardon these Caprivian prisoners. I thank you.